Hey everybody, welcome to Live at 5. I know I'm standing in the middle of the screen here. I am Jack, of course, here from Island Music Company, and I'm joined here with Todd, who's going to do some presentations and demonstrations and talking about our line of products here from Allen and Heath, and give you a nice introductory to digital consoles and why you should start using digital consoles rather than analog. So I'm going to jump out of the way because you know way more about this than I do, and I'm going to let you do your thing. So everybody... Here's
Very
Todd, and we'll enjoy the show.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, let me turn this thing on and see. Yeah, we're good. I thought that I would start today just by talking about the differences between an analog console and a digital console. And I thought that we would talk about the advantages and at this point in time, why you should be considering, if you haven't already, and what the differences are between the different digital consoles. So I'm going to start out very, very basic here and talk about what a console actually is. A mixing console is basically a mixing board, audio mixer, soundboard. It's going to basically take and combine and route input signals to various outputs, allowing us to process those signals as they go through the console. And it could be microphones, instruments, drums, whatever it may be. Even recorded tracks. But we want to bring it all together into a mixing console and create a cohesive mix so it all sounds good and balanced. Components of a mixing console. I'm going to get real basic here. We have faders. I think everybody knows what a fader is. We have pan pots. If we've got a stereo rig, we can go left, right. EQ knobs, equalization. We're going to take that equalizer and tailor the tonal aspects of every single input. Aux sends, this is also referred to as buses. And we're going to take that signal and we can run it to various buses. And those buses could be different monitors. Maybe you've got a monitor in front of you or you've got monitors in your ears. So that would be, you'd be getting your signal and it would be a tailored mix on that aux send to your ears or your monitor bus. Or your monitor wedge. Buses, basically the same thing, but we're taking your left-right output is a bus, your subwoofer output is a bus, your auxiliary sends are all buses. They're basically just where we're going to take all these inputs and we can route them to different places out different buses. Okay, let's talk real quick about digital audio because that's where we're here today. I think everybody at this point probably knows what a digital audio signal is. But we're going to take an analog signal, and an analog signal is basically looks like a sine wave, a very complex sine wave. This is as easy as it gets right here, as far as a sine wave goes. But we're going to take that and we're going to turn it into ones and zeros, right? There are a lot of things that we need to worry about with regards to the ones and zeros. Most importantly, is going to be our sample rate, and a sample rate is basically represented by bit depth and a sample rate, how many samples per second it's going to take of that signal when we turn it into a 1 or a 0. The higher the sample rate, the higher the frequency response. The more the bit rate depth is, the better the signal to noise ratio is. So these are very, very important specifications when we're talking about the difference in the quality of various digital mixers. So you can see here 8-bit, 16-bit, and 24-bit. This is our bit depth. And as you can see here, a 24-bit signal is basically DVD high-res audio. And that can give us up to 144 dB of signal-to-noise ratio. If you don't know what signal-to-noise ratio it is, that's the ratio between the overall noise and the signal within that noise. Okay? So this is how wide the signal is. This is how much real signal there is, and there's this much noise. All right, so the ratio between this and this is what we're talking about. The higher the signal-noise ratio, the cleaner the sound, the cleaner the signal. Less hiss, less noise, less all that stuff. Okay? 16-bit, that's old school, and that's CD audio. Okay, we're way beyond that now. To put it into perspective, our new Allen and Heath consoles are floating, but they're up to 96-bit. And so when I start talking about the difference in sound quality of digital mixers, the sample rate and the bit depth of these mixers Makes a world of a difference. The last thing, well, there's our sample rate. How many times a second a sample's taken? Okay, you want to equate a sample rate to pixels on a camera. Okay, 10 megapixels is a lot more samples of that picture than 6 megapixels is. Same thing here. Our sample rate, most of our new consoles are all 96K. That is different than almost every single mixer out there in the same price range. All the mixers that you're familiar with, all the mixers that you see, and the inexpensive digital mixers you see out there, they're all 48K sample rates. Big difference. You take the, the sample rate and cut it in half, and that's the frequency response of that console. Okay, so 96K sample rate means we have a 48K signal, frequency response of that console, which means a lot when you're talking about recording and everything else. You can go on and on, but it's just a higher resolution. As you can see here, our input, this is what a very low sample rate is. This is what a very high sample rate is, and look at this representation is very similar to what came out originally, or what it started as. So the higher the sample rate, the more resolution that signal has. And this is the other big one when it comes to digital consoles, is latency. When we go from an analog signal into a digital signal, that process, we're going to go through an A to D converter, analog to digital converter, and then we might go through an EQ, and we're going to go through a compressor, and we're going to go through a digital reverb, and we're going to go through this, and we're going to go through that. We might send it out this aux channel to my ears. All of those things on an inexpensive or mixer causes delay or latency. This is huge. It's very huge in the professional touring world. If I have a digital microphone and I'm going into a digital console and I'm going to go back into some digital ears in my head, if that latency is too long, I'll actually hear myself detuned in my own ears. And so you have to be cognizant. You want your digital microphones to be as low latency as possible. The Shure Axiom Digital, which is probably the #1 touring microphone out there, is 2 milliseconds. A good mixing console is sub 1 millisecond. All the Allen and Heath, whether it's our little $600 CQ, all the way up to this $30,000 touring grade console, they are all 670 microseconds. Some of the consoles latency that you know, and I won't name names, but most of what you see out there in churches and schools and garage bands and digital consoles have latencies up to 3 milliseconds. So take your 2 out of your mic, take 3 out of your console, now we're at 5. 5 seems to be the magic number, but if we're going into any other stuff, we could get to the point where if I'm in here, I can't, it's unusable. I used to play saxophone a lot. I don't play it very often anymore. Last time I played it, I was at a club in Orlando, and I had ears, and everything was digital. And the whole time I realized that there was so much latency in the signal getting back to my ears, I thought I was flat. I thought I was playing flat. And so I'm biting down on everything, and everybody's looking at me weird. And I pulled an ear out, and it's like, oh my gosh. It was this detuning in my head that was really screwing me up. So latency is very, very important. All right? If you have too much latency, it causes what's called comb filtering. It's called comb filtering because it looks like a bunch of teeth of a comb. Comb filtering is bad because comb filtering is going to cause frequency dropouts. I don't know if you know, but if we have a signal going up, a sine wave going up, and we have another sine wave that's going down in the exact same time, they cancel each other out 100%. Well, when you have this many filters, the chances are good we have another signal in there that's going to be just off just a little bit, and you have all kinds of phase problems going on and cancellations going on. Which leads me to my next, that's why they call it the unintended EQ. You don't want that. Which leads me to my last thing. And I am going to brag about Allen and Heath because all of our mixers have what's called phase coherent mixes. What that means is no matter what, we're going to take this input channel and we might run it through all these different processors within the mixer. And we might take this one, skip that, and go to here. This is a different one than that one. But you can see here I'm running this one through a whole bunch of stuff. This one I'm only running through this much stuff. At the end of the day, all my inputs hit all my output buses exactly at the same time. They are phase coherent. Every other manufacturer that's not running a 96K mixer, pretty much every other competitor other than Allen and Heath under $15,000 does not have this. So this is a really important thing. Phase coherent mixes can really make the difference in the way it sounds. I'll tell you a quick story about my church. I went from an Allen and Heath 48K mixer without phase coherent mixes, an old one from 20 years ago, still a digital mixer. And when we went to the SQ7, which is the big brother to this guy, I probably had 15 or 20 people come up to me after the first service and say, did we get a new sound system? Everything sounds so good. The difference was we went from 48K to 96K. We went to a bigger bit depth, and we went to phase coherent mixes. And I'm talking about 75-year-old ladies coming up saying that, did you fix the sound system because it sounds so good? So it means something. All of this stuff means something. Okay? Differences between analog and digital. Analog consoles use physical components to manipulate audio signals. They literally are just using filters and stuff. You're running this sine wave through an EQ that's bending and shaping it and all of that stuff. Digital consoles are going to use DSP. On an analog console, if I screw around with it too much, I'm just adding noise to my signal. On a digital console, because we're in the digital world, I'm not necessarily adding noise. I'm just manipulating those ones and zeros. I'm not adding noise. Another big thing is obviously recallable settings, automation. I can actually hear I can have banks and banks of different things going on. I can do, there's a smaller one of this called the SQ5. I can do a band with 48 inputs on a console this big, because if I play it all right and have all my stuff grouped and DCA'd and everything the way I want to have it, I can get away with using 12 or 13 faders on a very large system. I know a guy who can do monitors for a large act, 70 input channels on a big country act. He actually works for Allen and Heath. He uses one of these, and he can do 70 inputs on this little tiny console. Because if you know what you're doing, you can get it all down to where you're only manipulating a few faders. All right, why are digital consoles better? Multiple form factors. These are just various form factors of the Allen and Heath family. This is the new CQ product, that little guy right there. That's actually Jack's, I think. This is a 96K mixing console using that FPGA powerful chip for everything it does. It sounds as good as this one does. And that one, I don't know, what do they even start at? CQ, $699. We're not talking about a lot of money here. Then we move up to the SQ, which is this guy right here. It comes in a 5, a 6, and a 7. And we just launched the rack. So you can use this SQ rack with an iPad and not need anything else. Okay? Then we have the Avantis console. That's the next step. So this is up to, I think, 20 channels maximum. Our QU series, which is getting phased out because it's a 48K board, but they go from 16 to 24 to 32. Then you have the SQ, which is up to 48 channels. Then we have the Avantis, which is up to 64 channels. And then our D-Live system is actually 170 inputs by 70 outputs on this little guy right here. All right? And this is a bigger version of this. The beautiful thing, when you get to D-Live, this is the console. This is a 48 input stage box. This is the console. You know what this is? A keyboard and mouse. That's all it is. All the mix. This is called the mix engine because it's not just your I/O, but it's your mixer. I can run an entire show on an iPad and this. All right. Another big thing about digital mixing consoles is the fact that we can network and distribute all kinds of stuff. This is this board right here. I can plug all of this stuff into this guy. I told you 170 by 70. And it's all nothing more than a bunch of Cat5 cables going through a switch. That's a huge advantage, especially for churches. I was talking to Jack. I mean, we take our signal out of the front of the house and we squirt it off to a room that's got the little version of this. And it's for broadcast and recording. We also send it to another mixer that they use for simultaneous translation. So everybody wants their own mix. And it's easy to do when you can just squirt things everywhere. Also, I have enough outputs on this that I could actually have 12 stereo ears coming off this console. 12 sets of stereo ears. So you could have 12 people on stage, all with their own mix of stereo in-ear monitors. This is more applicable to what, your average church or school or something. That's the SQ5, the smaller version of this guy. This is our input here. We're going to daisy chain another. This is 24. Here's another 16, so now we're to 40. This is just nothing more than a big, robust rack mount PoE switch.
Can you use Cat 5 or Cat 6?
At this point in time, Cat 6, I use Cat 6 just because it's just, at this point, it's just as cheap. 5e is, I call 5e the minimum. But most of it comes down to, if you're going to go Dante, which this is Dante, they're going to want to see something else. They're going to want to see Cat 6, and they prefer Cat 6 shielded, which is a pain in the butt if you've ever had to terminate a shielded Cat cable. We have our own protocol that we call D-Link, and now it's called S-Link, sorry. But our S-Link could run on Cat 5 if you wanted to.
But really, you should be moving towards Cat 6.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I got 6 of these 20-foot Cat 6, small, thin ones, Cat 6 cables. I got 6 of them from Amazon for $14. But now we're going to come off the switch, and these are personal monitor mixers. So now I can plug my headphones or my earbuds into one of these. And you don't need wireless ears if you're not wireless. Our keyboard player doesn't need wireless. They use one of these. Our drummer doesn't need wireless. He uses one of these. Our bass player, our guitar player, the only ones that actually need in-ear monitors are the singers up front. Ease of use. We could go on and on and on about this. Once you learn a little bit about the console, it is so much easier to do what you want to do, to create that awesome mix. It's way easier to do in the digital world than it is in the analog world. I've got way better compressors, way better EQs. Everything I've got in here is better. But just if we get into some of this stuff, you also want to make sure that you don't pick a mixing console that's menu driven. I remember, and listen, Yamaha kind of defined the digital mixing console back in the day, or they were like the first to go broadband with digital mixing consoles. They had this little mixing console called the LS9. I think you had to hit the menu button 3 times and then select a channel just to turn the phantom power on. Okay, so you don't want a menu-driven console. You want to be able to just hit select. Once I hit select on the mixer, now here's my EQ, here's my compression, everything's right there. It's just like an analog console, and I want it all at the touch of a button. All right? Other things. You want the processor, the channel strip processing to look as much like an analog. If you're going from an analog desk to a digital desk, you want it to look as much like an analog desk as possible, because it may not always be someone who knows what they're doing. You're dealing with a lot, especially schools and churches, you're dealing with a lot of volunteers. and you'll just scare them. All of a sudden, you'll go from 6 people that want to be in the tech booth to 1. Now, here's where this is the part that I can't stress enough. I've been doing sound for a very long time. Even in the church world, I've been doing sound for a very long time. But my first gig in this industry was being a monitor guy for a small regional touring company in my college town in Illinois in 1982. That's how I got into audio. You get one person that knows what they're doing. You get them to set up, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth. But you see down here, I say shows, scenes, and channel libraries. You got one person that knows what they're doing to set up that board. And sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 weeks of services till they really get it locked in the way it is. But once you have that, you can train anybody to come in and say, okay, oh, Jeff's on drums. He always brings that really cool 6.5-inch snare. Like, I've actually saved the compression and EQ settings for Jeff's snare drum. I'm going to bring that in because Jeff's on drums this week. Oh, Mike's on bass. Oh, Brent's on guitar. I'm pulling in all the EQ and compression settings and everything I use for those guys. I'm just dragging and dropping. Oh, it's Micah on bass. It's da-da-da-da-da. Pulling that stuff in. So if I'm not around, you could do it. Say, oh, look, Jeff's on bass or on drums. I know he brings his own snare. You go to the library, you pull down Jeff's snare and put it on the snare channel, and now all of my settings are now on there. You can go to my shows and scenes. I personally do a scene for every song. And then I use these soft buttons, and it says, next scene, go. Next scene, go. Next scene, go. And so I'm doing that because I want to, during rehearsals, I'm going to set it up so that first 8 bars of that song are pristine. It's just that female vocal and that acoustic guitar or whatever it is. I'm going to get the level set, the reverb set. I'm going to say everything just the way I want it. And that's how I'm going to set the scene. I'll manipulate it as the song goes on, but I want that first scene to be exact. I want that, the first 8 bars to be perfect, right? And then the right mix of internal processors and effects engines exceed anything you could do back in the old days, in the analog days. You'd have to have what's inside this thing, you'd have to have a rack 6 feet tall of outboard gear to match what's in here, okay? Multiple user levels. This is a big one for churches and schools and stuff. Again, I'm going to set up the console because I know what I'm doing. You're the guy who knows what you're doing. You're going to set up the console, but I'm not there all the time. All right? I'm going on vacation. I'm doing this. Sometimes I just don't want to go to church. So, I'm calling my backup and saying, hey, Bob, can you cover me this Sunday? I'm going to go to a 3-year-old granddaughter birthday party. I can set it up. Every single thing on that console can I can either allow you to have access to it or I can lock you out of it. So depending on how good you are is how much leeway or how much freedom I'll give you. If you're not, yeah, go ahead.
Just wondering, is there any capability to do it remotely?
No. You mean set this up? No. No. But
Say you went on like
yeah,
kids thing.
I can have
Called you and there's no way you can.
no, but I can have all these people already in there preset. So now I'm going to come in. I'm the admin. I'm going to come in. I'm going to put in my password, and boom, it unlocks everything. Okay, you're good. You're real good, but I don't want you to be able to change the routing, and I don't want you to be able to change my library settings because I got these all dialed in after all this time. I don't want you messing with Jeff's snare. I got it perfect. So what I'm going to do is give you rights, allow you to do everything except those 2 things. You, maybe not so much. Maybe I'm going to lock everything out except faders. All you get to do is mix. I'm just kidding. You look like a very nice man who's smart. All right, so multiple user levels is a good thing. And that if there's one takeaway from this, a consistency of mixes. Consistency of mixes. If I'm not there, I've got everything set up so well, all they got to do is pull in those libraries and mix, okay? scene and show recall. So this is Keith's mixer. We just pulled it out of the box. I mean, he's going to be mad at me because I ripped the little sticker off that was on the screen. But all I did is took my thumb drive and loaded my backup of my church's system, my church's thing onto his mixer here. So as you can see here, this is my mute all. This is my mute. Here's my effects. That's my mute effects. You can see now that they're muting. This is my global tap tempo for my doubling of the voice. And this is my local tap tempo. And that's if I ever wanted to do some special effect where I want to be able to go at the end of a phrase. So I have two different tap tempos for two different delays. One's just always running as a doubling effect on the vocals to make them sound fatter, and the other one's more of a special effect. By the way, I lock that special effect one out. Nobody gets to use it besides me. And the reason, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to really screw things up.
Sorry to ask a question. If there was a catastrophe and presets, you could always then
Go back to the default scene.
Yeah, okay. Or give Dwayne access to your thing and say, hey, you know, if you go
Oh, yeah.
with my user ID, everything will come up back
Yep,
up
yep,
normal.
yep. Well, no, you don't even need that. I'm going to give everybody the ability to recall the default scene. Everybody gets that. Because it's kind of like pass and go. All right, we want to get back to zero so that, okay, now we're back to the way it should be. I don't know what I did to screw it up, but now I'm back. I'll start over with this mix again. All right, but
Let me ask you something, just
yeah.
so I understand, because I haven't seen that feature before. So I think I understand you're saying that I have a tap feature, so I can set that delay.
Yep,
Right?
to the tempo of the song.
Right, generally.
Yep.
But the other one is instantaneous. Like I can tap now. Is that what that other?
Both of them are instantaneous. I just have two delays. I run two delays. One of them is just a slapback. It's just a quick echo at the end, almost a doubling effect. It's so quick, it's only a few milliseconds, it's almost like a chorus effect. It just fattens the voice. Yeah, well, yes. And that's usually what I'm running my my slapback on. And they actually have presets on their delays for that. That gives you dotted eighths. And so I'm going dotted eighths, but then I'm probably tapping in an eighth note as well. And because all I want to do is just fatten it up. The other one is, so we have two different types of tempo. And on the delays, you can choose global or local. So my slapback is a global. So the first thing I'm going to do is just tap my eighth notes on the global to match the tempo of the song. Then if I'm going to use, at the end of this one particular phrase, I want to put a little bit of a tail on there, a special effect. Then I'm going to local that one. So I need a different tap tempo because I don't want it to be eighth notes. I want it to be quarter notes.
It's just momentary for that moment.
No. It's there until I change it.
Oh, I got you.
It's just like I've got two delays and two tap tempo controls. That's all I'm doing. Because if I put a special effect one on that global tap tempo, it's going to see eighth notes. And I don't want eighth notes. If it's an effect, I want it to be a quarter note effect. So yeah, that's what that's for. But I can completely, so the way we do it is I'll set up the show. And the show basically, if it's a fixed installation, like my church, the show is, I got one show. But every Sunday, if we're doing 4 songs, I do that Sunday a default, so it'll be February 24th or whatever it is, 2025. That's the first scene, and that's where I've plugged you in as the guitar player and you in as the bass player, and so now that's all set. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to go in and do. We got 4 songs going. I'm going to label the 4 songs. And then I'm going to set my as the band is rehearsing, I'm going to set that whenever they're done running through the song once or twice, then I would say, okay, do me a favor, just give me 16 bars. So they give me 16 bars at the beginning of the song, and I get everything just the way I want it, and that's how I save that scene. And then I can just, as they go through their songs, I'm just going to go next scene, go. Next scene, go. On the bigger ones, the more pro ones, you even have crossfade. So I can crossfade. So like if you're doing a Broadway show or something, as I'm walking off the stage, they might be crossfading my microphone to mute and bringing yours in because you're walking on stage. And so, you know, they're doing cues. Even you go to a rock concert, one song might have 10 or 15 scenes. You look at some of these scenes that on somebody who, you know, is doing it at that level. There's a scene for the guitar solo. There's a scene for this. There's a scene for that. There's a scene when Billy Joel's sitting at the piano. There's one when he's standing with a microphone. I mean, they've got a bazillion scenes, right? But we have shows, scenes, and then libraries for the individual instruments. You can't go wrong with that combination. Also, I will set the entire console up ahead of time in case I am going to call my friend Bob and say, Bob, I don't want to be there on Sunday. Multiple layers of user libraries. This is what I've already talked about. But first of all, if we go to the when you first turn it on, you can go to factory. You can get a head start on everything right away. So, okay, you're a male vocal. I'm going to go in. I'm going to hit vocal here. I got a choir microphone. These are all just presets. I've got snare drums. I got kick drums. I can go in and just recall that library, and it's a good starting point. Now I can dial in the way I like it, and then I'll go over here to user and store new, and now it's Jeff's 6.5-inch snare. Or it's Keith's, you know, P bass. And then it's Keith's jazz bass.
I'm sorry if you already talked about this, but I saw something that was interesting as a preamp model. What's that about?
Oh, well, I'll get to it.
Okay.
This is actually my SQ7. I have it kind of pimped out in my church. So it's the one version bigger than this. It's just got another 8 faders. Otherwise, it's the same console. But I'm taking the iPad app, which is also the laptop app, and I'm running it. And as you can see, it's just my meter bridge. Now I've got a meter bridge on a big screen here that I can watch all the meters. Over here, I'm running a little free program called REW, Room EQ Wizard. I got my little $99 Behringer test microphone at front of house. And I'm just running that for my SPL and my RTA, my real-time analyzer. So if I hear something, it's like, oh, Keith just hit a note that ripped my, put ears off. I can quickly look and say, oh, that was 2.6. I'll go to Keith's mic and try to pull down 2.6.
Can you use that to tune the room with like pink noise or white noise?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a poor man's smart. All right, let's talk about some other really cool. Now we're getting into some cool stuff. The SQ series, I think actually the CQ as well, but SQ, Avantis, and D-Live all have an automatic mic mixer built into them. The one that you use for live sound the most is what's called the gain sharing auto mixer. So every time you double the number of open microphones, your signal actually electrically increases by 3 dB. Okay? So if we got one mic open and then I join in, now we got 2. The signal just jumped up electrically 3 dB. You 2 join in, now we're 6 dB higher than we used to be. You guys join in and you guys join in, and now we're 9 dB. At some point, the speakers will start popping out of the grills, right? At some point, you've got feedback, you've got problems. So automatic mic mixers basically compensate for that. There are 2 types, gated or gain sharing. In the live world, I like using gain sharing. In the recording world, I like to use gated. I won't get into gated because most of you guys are probably talking about live at this point. Gain sharing microphones means that my output gain is X, whatever X is, right? So if there's only one microphone live, it's all 1X, okay? Now, another microphone joins in. The output gain doesn't change because now he gets 0.5X and I get 0.5X. We're still at 1X. And as you add microphones, it's basically like somebody's automatically moving the faders up and down. I don't use that on my vocal microphones, my singers. but I use it on the pastor. Anybody who's got a headset or a lav microphone on, I'm using it on the pastors and the people doing ratings, the people doing announcements about the upcoming events and all that. I could have 2 or 3 people on the stage and I'm not even worried about it. I'm not even touching anything. The mixer's just automatically mixing them for me so that they don't feed back and everything's cool. That's a huge feature. What do I do with my thingy? Here we go. Monitor mixing. I won't go into it very much, but obviously we have, at Allen and Heath, we have hardware monitor mixers. We also have, I can assign, we have a app for your phone or an iPad called SQ for You. So I can assign you your AUX 1. You're the lead singer. You get AUX 1. You now sign into the Wi-Fi in the church, and you say, I'm mix 1, and now you have control over everything that's going into your ears by yourself. Okay? It's not that uncommon. I think at this, huh?
From your phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I can take any earbuds and just
Yep.
normal Bluetooth earbuds, run them out of my
No. It's got nothing to do with audio, only control. We still have to get the signal to you, which would be, a Shure PSM 300 or some ear packs. Okay, they're going to actually get routed out of, we'll send AUX 1 to that PSM 300, and then it'll get wirelessly transmitted to you, but you get to turn, Jeff's playing too loud, you get to turn the drums up and down, and you get your own mix. So you got all 48 channels there. You can take the drums, got kick, snare, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3, overheads, you stick them all into a group now that you got a drum slider on your phone.
So I'm like, I just need to hear kick drum and lead.
I feed most people kick drum and overheads. Kick drum for the tempo, and overheads just so they can hear something going on, right? But we have all kinds of ways at this point to personalize your monitors, which is pretty cool. And that's all free, by the way. These are cool. My church has 5 of these and then 4 wireless ears. This is keyboard, drummer, bass player, acoustic player, and electric player, because they're just staying in there. They're not jumping around the stage. And then all the singers, they all have wireless. So these guys, they get to go in and say, okay, there's kick drum, let me mix that. Okay, next one, there's snare, let me mix that. Okay? This is where it gets cool. Okay? This is what you just, so it's very inexpensive. If you see that sticker, it says register this thing and you get a free tube mic pre. So you get that free from Allen and Heath just for registering your console. Well, I went one step further because they sell the plugins online, and I think for $350 or something, I got a whole bunch of really kick butt compressors, and I think it was $150 for a bunch of cool EQs. These compressors, that compressor plug-in package is worth every penny. This is an emulation of an old 1176 studio compressor. I use that on my drums and on my bass guitar. The other cool thing about this is that we have what's called parallel compression, a parallel path. So like on my kick drum, I'm smashing the crap out of it with this particular compressor. I'm smashing it. I'm making it to be pow, pow. But if I couldn't mix in some of the dry signal, I wouldn't get enough gain out of it. So I'm smashing my compressor's smashing the original signals a lot, but then I'm probably putting in about 50-50, maybe even a little bit more dry signal, so that I'm using that compressor to give me that punch, but I'm still got the gain and everything that I want from the drum itself. And then there's a whole bunch of EQs. I typically don't use, probably didn't need to buy the EQs, because I'm more of a parametric EQ guy, not a graphic guy. And most of the EQs that you can buy are graphics. Any questions on the plugins? There's a bunch of them. You can go to allenheath.com and see.
Plugins load to the board directly, or you have to use the computer that you're doing all the
So you go into the computer, and you're in a particular section on the screen of the computer, of the console, and you plug in the number that when you buy it, it gives you a special code, And you just put that in and it unlocks those plugins. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I couldn't live without the compressor pack. Just couldn't do it. There's one called Opto that is so good. It's like they asked a whole bunch of guys what your favorite aspects were of a compressor. And this guy from Abbey, because they're English, some guy from Abbey Road Studios and some guy from LA and some guy, and they put them all together and called it the Opto. I can put that on a vocal and hardly touch anything, and it's just like, whoa. So, anyways, this is big. This is remote control. We can get into all the different ways. We've got moving fader, networkable remote controls, little mini desks, right? This is actually a wall plate, so we can just have one thing on it and use it as a volume. We can do custom controls. All of our mixers have their own app. You saw on my picture of my church, I'm running the app just from a meter bridge. But if that was on an iPad, I could walk all over everywhere and mix it. See if we can do this without. This is the SQ app. So here's, if I was hooked up to a mixer, I'm actually mixing right now on that mixer. And I can get to everything I need to get to. EQs, everything. Okay? Now I got to figure out how to get back. Okay. The biggest, coolest thing about remote control and some of this stuff, even if it's an iPad that you give the pastor, is think about that Saturday wedding or that Wednesday afternoon funeral where all you really need is one or two microphones, maybe a keyboard or something. Somebody's going to sing one song or two songs or whatever, and then maybe some background music for a wedding. You might have you got to play, some entrance music or something. With this, like I said, we can do the user thing, and we can get rid of everything. I can give the pastor exactly what I want to give him. It says pastor microphone. It says handheld microphone. It says lavalier microphone, and it says Spotify. And maybe that's all I give him. And now he doesn't have to have a sound guy or pay a sound person to come in to do a wedding or a funeral. So that's huge. That's also huge in schools. A quick rally in the auditorium, you could just have something up on the stage that the principal could just go, okay, that's my lectern microphone, and that's all I got. Okay? This is bigger than you think it is. Recording. The CQ, the QU, and the SQ all have 32 tracks at 48K via USB. So I don't use it multi-track. I don't use it as much as I should, but I bought a little, 1 terabyte tiny little hard drive, SSD hard drive, that's USB'd in the back of my console, and every once in a while, it's some song sounded so good at rehearsal, it's like I gotta grab this thing. And I'll hit record and just record. That's what, I don't know what thing I had set up here, but I saw that one of the buttons was blue. That's my record button.
So you can do real multi-track, not just
Oh yeah.
left and a right.
Oh no, so you got stereo and you got multi-track. And you might have 48 channels. You only get to record 32 of them. But maybe I don't care about recording the pastor. I don't care about this. I want to just multi-track the worship.
Sure.
So,
We record like a lot of our shows and then go back,
yeah.
take stuff in and out, add stuff.
Yeah, it's just a whole bunch of WAV files at that point. Throw them into your favorite DAW and go at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And once you have, the whole band's mic'd up, you got a good front of house guy.
And when you go to the I/O screen, it's actually, there's the USB output. So I've got the USB, it comes up as a matrix. And I can then at that point in time say, okay, do one kick, snare, and I just start going down. Track 1 is kick, track 2 is snare, and I start just checking boxes on this big. And so I get to choose the 32 tracks that I want to record. I don't need the click tracks. I don't need the backing tracks. I just want the band. Okay? Now the bigger desks don't have that.
Recording it on a drive, multi-track. You're recording it as a program, or as a
It gets thrown into a folder. Each time you hit record, it throws it into a folder. And I don't remember what it says. Like if you're on an SQ, it's like SQ1, SQ2, SQ3, and those are the tracks.
and the wave files.
They're all WAV files.
So then I could just dump those in my.
Oh yeah, drag and drop it into your, yeah. I have, I used it a lot during COVID. We went down on a Tuesday, everybody's masked up, and we record the songs digitally that would get mixed down for broadcast on Sunday. And that's when I was doing it. I bought it. I mean, I'm not a recording guy. People who listen to my recordings, they go, "You record like, are you mix recordings like you're a live sound guy." And it's like, yeah, I'm a live sound guy. Yeah, I forget it. I'm not even going to think about what my stupid DAW is. I actually stopped using it, so I took the computer into the church and said, "Here, one of you guys want to figure out how to? It's all yours." But the bigger units, USB isn't, and that's the one thing I'll warn you. There's a list of USB drives, both thumb drives, and I don't know where it is now, Keith. Here it is. A thumb drive. This is a 512 gigabyte thumb drive that I bought for that very reason, and then it didn't work. So there's a list of the ones that do work and the ones that don't work. And so whatever you do your experimenting before you're actually going to. That was very frustrating for me. It's like, oh my God. I just had them record 6 songs and I go back and they're all corrupt. So the big guys, because the USB thing is so fickle, the pro guys, they're going to use Dante to get out of here and go into a computer. They're going to use Waves. There's a Waves card you can get to go into a Wave server. There's a MADI card you can put in here to come out. I don't know if you know what MADI is. That's another digital protocol. And there's AES cards you can go in if you want to go into a computer via AES. So you can see on the bigger consoles, most of your touring guys, they'll use digital recording for sound checks. Like the monitor guys will actually record one song during rehearsal and then tell everybody to go away. And then they'll sit through because they know how you like your stuff and he knows how you like yours. And they'll just listen to each mix and they'll work on that one. They recorded that one thing, that one song, and they'll work on everybody's mix so it's perfect for them when they come out, when the show goes on.
And to that, I was talking to Bangs last week, who's one of Alan and Heath's live sound kind of experts, goes out on the road and preaches the gospel for him. And he's out on tour with George Strait for the last 20 years. He's a monitor.
Oh, he's done Katy Perry. He's done.
Yeah, he's done all kinds of people. But he said that they had 2 new female singers coming, so they weren't sure what microphones could do. So during rehearsals, with full PA and everything, he would put 3 or 4 mics up in front of him with only one live and just record them. And then he went back at night and listened to what microphone sounded best for them, because they didn't care what mic it was. They're just sing.
By the way,
They
it's,
wanted to make sure
yeah.
that the mics were the right mics for them.
By the way, I do that live because I don't have a recording. I do, but I don't do it that way. But I do that, the advantage is I've been the Shure rep. Today's my 30th year as the Shure rep. But I have a big locker of mics that I've collected over the years. And so I might listen to you and you've got, a real heathery voice or something like that. It's like, you know what? You need something with a little bit more high frequency sparkle. Maybe I'll try a Beta 87 on you. And maybe you're too bright and I need to try something like a KSM9 on you to darken it up a little bit. So I do that anyways all the time. But he has the luxury of doing that, recording them all, and then making the decision for them. All right. This is the big disc. This is where we got to, the rubber meets the road here. Digital consoles will dramatically improve the sound quality of a system, period. If you're still working analog at the price points that you can get in at digital at this point in time, it's silly not to. Period. I mean,
Can I just stress that? I know people have no idea.
yeah.
That is what makes your system sound good or not. It's sound, and you'll never really know it until you do it. You might think your system sounds like $1,000,000 with the way you have it, and it might. And if it's not the best, and you put something better on, it will sound like $2,000,000. It's crazy how that can just change your
Oh,
entire system.
I told you when I went to a 96K console, I had people coming up thinking that we had changed the entire sound system. So, digital consoles can make a dramatic difference. However, they're not all alike, right? As we discussed, sample rates are big. Okay, this day and age, I think it's down here. Oops. Oh no. What did I do? Don't allow. Okay. In this day and age, the fact that you can get a $699 mixer that's 96K sample rate, you should not be looking at a console, a digital console to buy. You should not be spending money on anything that's not 96K. Okay? It doesn't make sense. We also talked about bit depth. These consoles, because of the FPGA processors they use, these consoles have variable rate up to 96-bit. Most of the consoles in their price range are 24-bit. All right? Another thing that's got to be, and again, phase coherent mixes, latency, these are all key factors. But the things that should be deal breakers to you are, you should be buying a 96K console. You should be getting as much of the largest or deepest bit depth you can get. Phase coherent mixes, I told you before, that makes a world of a difference. And there are very few consoles under $15,000 other than Allen and Heath that even offer that. You saw all the processing, those plugins that we can run through, and the compressors and the EQs and the tube preamps and the different reverbs and other processors that are in there. A console that doesn't have phase coherent mixes, all those signals end up at different times. And what does that cause? That causes comb filtering. And comb filtering degrades the quality of the sound. And I don't know that I'd be pushing these things as much as I do until I actually experienced it myself. Okay? All these things really sounded good on paper, and my boss says, hey, these are really good features. Not knowing enough about digital at the time, great, whatever. But it wasn't until I went to a 96K console with 96-bit depth and phase coherent mixes going, holy crap. I mean, honestly, that the sparkle that all of a sudden I had in the mix, those frequencies were getting canceled out because of all the phase coherent issues that I had, all the phasing and all the canceling of frequencies. It was like I added an entire octave on the high frequency side of my sound system by just taking care of some of the phasing issues I had in my old console. And we talked about it, but throughput latency is obviously something that you need to consider. Because Shure just launched, and it's at the higher end, it's at the highest end right now of ears, digital ears. They just launched a digital ear. Their microphones are 2 milliseconds, the ears are 2.9, so we're really close to 5. If you have a console that's 3 milliseconds latency, you're past the point of people are going to start going, whoa, 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 hey, this doesn't sound good to me. Some people can hear, I call on Claire, which is the big touring company, the biggest touring company in the world. They're in Lititz, Pennsylvania, and they're my biggest customer. They do anywhere in the world. They do about 150 shows a day. That's how many shows they do in a year. I mean, they bought Brit Row in England. They bought, they own everybody at this point. Everybody was for sale when the touring world shut down for a year and a half because of COVID. But they're getting these new digital ears. They're very expensive, but they're very cognizant of this. I mean, there are people like Bono who swears he can hear 2 milliseconds, which is silly. You can't hear 2 milliseconds, but he swears he can. So he has to have an analog rig. No matter what, he's got to have an analog mic. He's got to have an analog ears. He has to. The only thing he's got is a $275,000 Digico monitor desk with his own monitor guy, just for him. But he can do that because he's Bono, I guess. But latency is going to become more and more of an issue that we'll all understand more of as digital ears start to creep down in pricing. We already have digital microphones at this point that have crept down to a really good, SLXD from Shure. Awesome system for the money. These are awesome for the money. They're less than, 678 microseconds of latency. That's almost analog. I don't know that anybody could ever complain about 600 microseconds of delay. But as we these things will start to add up down the road. So when and if you're looking to buy a mixing console today, a digital mixing console today, these are the things that you should be aware of. That's, in my opinion, a deal breaker if it's not 96K in this day and age. The bit depth, 90% of what's out there is 24-bit. That's CD quality from 15 years ago. Phase coherent mixes. You don't really understand what they are until you hear it. And then latency, which right now in my church, I could probably have 10 milliseconds of latency. Nobody would know the difference. But if you're Bono, supposedly you can hear 1 millisecond. So anyways, that's it. What do you got for me? What can I answer for you? A couple things I didn't talk about. You see this is my church rig. You see the red channels versus the green? The red channels are DCAs. Do we know what DCAs are? A DCA is a digital control amplifier. All it is I've taken all my drums, and they're on the second page. Oh my God, my back. Kick 1, kick 2, snare, top, snare, bottom, hi-hat, rack 1, rack 2, floor 1, floor 2, overhead left, overhead right, percussion 1, percussion 2, percussion 3. All those microphones. I set my mix here, and then I control the volume of the entire drum rig there. That's why you can get away with a mixer with smaller. The next DCA are my guitars. Acoustic, electric, rhythm, lead, and bass. And then over here, I have a band and a vocal, a DCA. And the reason I use those is because once I've got everything set the way I want, I'll pretty much just run my sound, for the most part, messing with the band and the vocal. It's 48. You'd have to ask Heath. I love this board for the money. It's everything a church or a school should want. This little thing, if you're a small church, that is the same processor. That's 96K, same bit depth, everything. And it comes in an 8, an 18, and a 20 channel version for like $6.99, $8.99, and $12.99. So there's a lot of really, it's coming down in price. Everything, because Alan and Heath figured it out. Once they spent the bazillion dollars programming that FPGA chip, they're putting in all their mixers now. It started with this. They wrote all those leads on that chip. They wrote all that algorithms and everything for the big boy. Once they sold enough of the big boys, actually I shouldn't be pointing here, I should be pointing here because that's where the guts are. Once they sold enough of these, it's like, okay, well, let's come out with the SQ series and throw that chip in there. Now we got 96K, we got the bit, we got everything pro into a smaller. Then they're like, well, let's go one step further. Let's put all that same stuff. That's got Wi-Fi built into it. You can Bluetooth your phone in for background music. That's the perfect mixer for someone who's got a little acoustic duo or something. It's the perfect thing. It's got automatic mic mixing in it. So, they've really, at this point in time, have stepped up their game. My favorite is the Avantis. If I go back to the beginning.
Are all those compatible with standard digital snakes, or do you have to have a?
You have to have their snakes. You don't have to. They're all compatible if you want to use Dante. But I wouldn't use Dante, in my opinion. It's more flexible with what you can do with it. We can record, we can do that. But it's not plug and play. You've got to route things, you got to do all that stuff. You take our stage box and you run a Cat 5. Look at this is 48 by 24. I just plugged from here into here, and I got my 48 by 24 here without having to route anything. It's just boom.
So if you use Dante, you'd have to route each
Yeah.
of those individually.
Well, yeah, you have to go into the matrix and you can, yeah.
So if you're not using Dante or something like that, it sounds like you use it at your church. So
I don't use Dante.
no, I mean
Yeah.
this console. So how do you stream from it?
Well, two ways we do it. There's what's called tie lines built into this. And tie lines are nothing more than an in to an out. So I'm going to come in with this kick drum right here in channel 1. And I'm going to come out of this kick drum into a virtual on the snake, on this. I'm going to come out channel 1 before I do any processing to it whatsoever. It's just a digital split. So I'm going to take all my inputs, split them off via tie lines, which is nothing more than a digital split that doesn't, no matter what I do here, what knobs I turn, no matter what I do, does not affect the signal. It's just in out. And then I'm going to run this cable into another mixing console for streaming. Or what I also do is we stream two different ways. That's how we record and do our master stream. We run to a SQ5, which is a smaller version of this. And that's what we use for our stream board. But we also just take, I take an analog output and embed it into plug it into our video production switch and have the two cameras that we have and just take a stereo off the board. I don't like doing that because my room is like 2.5 seconds in the low mids. So I'm sucking all that out. And you can hear that in the mix. It's like, wow, this is a real thin mix. Well, it has to be. I'm mixing for the room. I'm not mixing for the stream. The way you really do it is using tie lines to another console. And that's not via Dante. That's just via, we call it S-Link. And S-Link goes to any of our input. By the way, that's my favorite. If I could buy one, I'd get the small version of this. That's the 64-channel version with all the cool stuff in it. There. I can take all of this stuff can be done without going Dante or anything else. Just using Alan and Heath's protocol, their digital protocol, which is called S-Link. But I can take this input box and this input box and this one and this one. These are all input boxes. This little board, by the way, I love doing this. This little board is 170 inputs and 70 outputs. It weighs 27 pounds. The reason it's titanium. They had a version of this that was steel. They made it 27 pounds because in a road case, a tour grade flight case, it comes in at 49 and can get checked on any airplane anywhere in the world. And so a lot of the monitor guys and they call them fly packs. I'm flying with my own rig. I'm taking this with me because I don't want to get there and find out that they've got a 10-year-old X-32 for me to work on. And just so you know, I can save a show here, and I can put it on any one of the D-Live consoles. That's a D-Live console. There's even one bigger than that. So that's the S5. That's the most popular one. That one and this one are the most popular. This is probably becoming the most popular monitor console out there right now because of its size and weight. The monitor guys are the ones that are flying around with it. I mean, Jeff was talking about Bangs, who does George Strait. 70 inputs on the George Strait tour. and he's doing all the ears on this guy. So it's fun. We can go. I have an SQ7. You can see that all I did was took my last backup for my church that's on this thumb drive, popped it in there and loaded it up just so you could see more fancy lights.
So you're taking one input signal and you're running it into multiple boards.
Yeah,
And you're doing that through the linking, S-link or whatever you call it.
yeah.
So you basically plug the two ports together and they're getting the same input.
Yeah, so what we have, they have cards. You can buy cards. Dante cards, Waves cards. Well, we have one called a Giga Ace card. That Giga Ace card is nothing more than our protocol output. So what we did, I'm coming off the stage to front of house. Then I'm taking a Giga Ace card and installing it in the back of my console here and running a Cat5 cable to the streaming studio where the production mixers are and everything else, and then just routing the tie lines 1 to 1. So 1 through 48, they're getting it all.
So every input that's coming into whatever that board is through that tie line, the unadulterated
Yep.
clean signal is going to the output for your
Yep.
live feed.
The only thing you can't do in the tie line is affect the preamp gain. Only one person gets to do that.
So it's actually,
Well, actually, no. On this console, you can. Sorry. This console, you can. Because the mixer is built in to the I.O. box. So you got a preamp here, and only one guy gets to affect the gain on the preamp. But they give you the gain and a digital trim.
but you can still turn up the gain that you from the signal that you're getting if you have to.
On that, you can, yes. Because you have, all I'm doing is sending the signal. So you get to adjust yourself. The preamps are built in, the mixer's built into the mixer. This, you could have 2 mixers or 3 mixers or 4 mixers sharing this one preamp. Only one guy gets the keys. But there's a there's a trim, and then there's a digital gain. So if I'm the front of house guy and I like it hot, the monitor guy doesn't like it hot, he can take my trim and he can take his digital gain and back it up. Because it's digital, we're not adding any noise. We're just turning down our ones and zeros.
We're talking about streaming, so you don't have a second room to
Oh yeah.
meet your room. You just run the stream directly from off the board.
Sure you can. Yes, you can. The problem with it is, are you going to mix for the room or are you mixing for the stream? And that's 2 different mixes. Now, I can also tell you there's a poor man's way of doing it, which I've done before. Before we bought the SQ5, this little ME1 is a little mixer with 16 stereo channels. So I can take all my drum microphones and I can even pan my toms, and I can have one knob that's my drums. I can have one knob that's bass. So I can actually use the 16 stereo channels and then just analog out, because that's my ear mixer, right? I can analog out of that into my video production or my streamer to get embedded into the stream.
One more question. Is there an advantage of getting the 6 versus the SQ7?
It's all just preference. You know, I thought I needed more. Well, I did when I first talked to church. All my churches now have SQs because I trained all the campuses on how to use it. We have 3 campuses. It's not like but we have 3 campuses and they all have SQ7s. If I would have actually, now that I've been working on it for a couple of years, I actually have it down now. The only thing I do with my SQ7, I only leave that top fader layer to make an adjustment to a drum, because remember my drums are on a DCA, and it's, you know, if I want to make I don't hear, you know, that floor tom is, I got to turn it down a little, and then I'm going to go right back to that in now. But I could get away with doing all 48 channels on the little SQ5. You can see how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 18. I'm using 18 faders of the SQ7. I have 6 free faders on the SQ6. So I can almost do it all on one layer of an SQ5. Because it's 8 faders less than this guy.
So I'm just going to lose fader count.
What's that?
As I go down, I'm just losing these
Just faders. That's the cool thing about it. That's the other cool thing about Allen Heath. The little, whatever that is, 6-channel version of the CQ and the 18 and the 20, it's all the same mixer. It's just how many mics can you plug in. This is all the same mixer. It's how much I/O you have on the back and how many faders you have. But you can have the little guy and then have a whole bunch of I/O boxes. I like the little, these are 96, I don't know if that's a DX. Oh, it's an AB. That's an old 48. That goes with these guys. But the DX168 is 16 by 8. I put one on stage left, one on stage right, and I got 96K pre's coming back to me hitting the board. And there's a daisy chain output on this. So I go into one from the console and come out of that one and go to the next one. Same thing with this. I don't even have to have a console. This, like what I said before at the beginning, this is nothing more than a keyboard and a mouse. This is the mixing console. This is the 170 by 70. And this, I can do on a laptop. I can do it on an iPad. I don't even have to have a console. Or I'm going to have the gigantic touring console if that's what I want. But they're all the same. You're not buying anything besides faders. It's another thing I like about it, and it's all the same operating system. If you know how to work this, you know how to work the Avantis. If you know how to work the Avantis, you know how to... This is the Avantis. That's 64. That's 48. That's 18. And that's 170. And if you know how to operate this guy, you pretty much know how to operate this one. If you know how to operate this one, you pretty much know how to operate that one. No secrets. It's not like you have to relearn anything. That's the cool thing about it. I could actually, if my church ever won the lottery, I could actually go to all Avantises and nobody would have a learning curve.
How often do you update the firmware?
I'm not a big fan of firmware updates unless it's something major. I learned that from my QSE days. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there is a firmware upgrade to this that is just freaking unbelievable. So yes, you want to have, this has now got what's called an RUFX upgrade in it, and it probably has the best sounding digital reverb in the world in it right now. It's got the best sounding harmonizer in it. They took it took 4 years, two guys, 4 years just to develop the digital reverb. But I learned something new. I don't know if you guys know what the formant is, what a formant is. So they have harmonizers and they have auto tuners built into this now. And there's a thing called a formant control. And everybody's voice is different. Everybody's voice, it's kind of like the shape of your windpipe. It's the whole deal. And that's what's the difference between a young child and an old man and a woman and a whatever. We all have a different formant, which is basically what the difference between a soprano and a bass. Right, right. But it's actually what makes you sound like you. So on their harmonizers, I can take the harmonizer and I can, let's say I'm going to go a fifth below whatever you're singing and a third above whatever you're singing, but then I'm going to adjust the formant until it actually sounds like Heath, because it gives you that adjustment. And then they put two really cool auto tunes in here. One of them is very, very smooth, again, formant control. So it doesn't sound artificial. But then they also have the T-Pain one in there too. So if you want to go T-Pain or Cher, you can. But some of the improvements that they just did on this guy are just like, holy cow. I'd say that it's the best internal effects. And again, when you leave the console, a lot of these people are like, oh, I got a Waves server and I got the Waves processors and I'm using all the Waves plugins. As soon as you leave the console, go out to that and then come back into the console, what did you do? You added latency. Okay? So Allen and Heath's philosophy is let's give them the best freaking effects you could ever want, and then you don't have to leave the console. And once you don't leave the console, everything's going to sound that much better. Anything else?
Before we finish up, I just wanted to thank Island Music for having this.
Yeah.
In the days stores like this are dwindling. We're not seeing as many of them, and it's really important to support these local music.
Well, not just important, but I mean, you can't get online what you get here. I don't care what anybody says.
I always have to mention that. I grew up in the day where there were a lot of music stores like this. We hung out in them all the time, and they're going away and going away.
I'm not a guitar player at all, but I can't possibly imagine. I mean, I did get my degree in music on saxophone. I can't possibly imagine why would anybody buy a guitar online. Why? I don't care if it's a Les Paul. I mean, you're going to want to feel the thing. You're going to want to say, yeah, this is the one I want. You know, you don't want the one that's...
It's great to have these events, meet people like you, show this stuff. It's just...
I don't get out much, so it's fun to talk to people.
So, thanks for coming, really. We're hanging, so if there's questions.
Yeah, anybody wants to see inside this thing a little bit?